Welcome, everybody, to my live. Welcome to my station. I have a question that I wanted to ask you today. If jobs vanish, who buys anything? And then who builds families? Um, this is a question that I've definitely been thinking a lot about. And I'm not the only one. Clearly, there's a lot of data and information and videos going out there with people expressing genuine concern about what's going to happen to them as AI is rapidly replacing work, replacing jobs. And I just can't shake this question off because it's not about AI taking jobs, it's about what happens after that. What happens to people after that? I know that there are usually options and opportunities for people to look into AI and other avenues of, creating income. But right now, where we're at, where people haven't found that solution, what does it mean for ordinary people who cannot very quickly adapt and transition into this new world that we find ourselves in? And obviously, what happens after that is very, very important. And you'll know why I'm saying that very soon because I'm going to be showing you what happens to societies when people stop affording stuff. It's not just a matter of inflation is hitting us and then now we're going to just find a way to solve this problem and then move on. No, it has very deep consequential um, results and impacts for the world that we live in. And a lot of people are also asking these questions, even though, sensing that something is a little bit off and doesn't quite add up about the future. And even though they can explain why, I mean, some people can explain why, but what happens to human worth when work disappears? Because work, vocation, who we are, what we do, what we put our hands to, is really a very, very basic part about just being a human being. And more and more we're being told that automation will make things cheaper. Well, cheaper for who? you know Faster. It'll make it faster. Yes. Faster for who? More efficient. Granted, I will absolutely support that it's made things more efficient in some instances, but more efficient for who? And I mean, we're not told what this means for ordinary people. The issue, AI automation is essentially creating economic displacement, large economic displacement in certain sectors, and we're seeing that a lot with white collar work. And work is becoming optional, and people are becoming economically unnecessary. Well, let me not be dramatic. Maybe not everybody, but certainly a large number of people are starting to feel the fears and the anxiety of becoming economically unnecessary. So, again, I'll ask, if jobs vanish, who buys anything? Or I guess the more important question that I want to pose today is, if jobs vanish and people can't participate in the economy, then who builds families? And what does that mean for populations who are largely affected by AI? Welcome to Pokes on Relationships, where we speak everything relationships. We speak about how relationships with money affects you, relationships with technology, and today I want us to talk about the world's economy and how it affects you, your family, and your relationship. Let's get into it. So, I have something on my eye. Sorry about that. The main issue that I have with AI right now, as it's really creating a lot of uncertainty and insecurity in some sectors, is that it's removing people's ability to participate in the economy. And outside of that, it's slowly also reducing the morale of people whose jobs have been taken away, who've lost their work to AI. And also when you're not able to participate, when you're not able to make money, and when you're not able to just work to provide for your basic needs, there's something very undignifying about that experience when you can't even just take care of yourself. And I think that that's the conversation that I want to have, because if you can't take care of yourself, you're certainly not thinking of bringing somebody else into your dynamic. And let's just say you do. If you do end up wanting to be in a relationship with somebody or trying to build a family, it's going to be increasingly difficult if you are not able to just take care of your fundamental needs. You'll know that if you're trying to build a stable career, a family, a future, your confusion about how that's going to play out right now in especially in Western societies and largely European societies who are also experiencing this, your confusion and your questioning is not irrational. I want you to know that you're not being irrational by thinking this way. And oftentimes we watch videos and we are reading articles and newspaper clippings on people losing their work to AI. And if it hasn't affected you, sometimes it can feel like something that is just out there, something that is affecting people. But I don't want us to become a people that are not aware of our fellow man, for lack of a better way to explain it, because I still say this over and over again. Humanity is beautiful. We are wonderfully made. We are created to be fruitful, to multiply, to create things, and to be proud of our creations, to be able to provide, multiply that, and even have more than enough to give away. And when that is being threatened, it really creates an environment of just anxiety, instability, and a hopelessness. And I want us to talk about it, because whether you like it or not, even if you think you don't care about it, some way, somehow, it's going to circle back to you. It's the world we live in and you can't ignore it. So let's just face it head on and talk about it. See, the issue that I have here is that modern economies depend on people earning wages in order to consume. And I love the Maslow hierarchy of needs, because I just feel like it gives you a very clear picture of what I'm trying to communicate when I want people to be more engaging and more aware about perhaps the deeper and the longer consequences of this AI world that we're living in right now. And just not just AI, right? Social media, so many things are happening, geopolitical relationships, international relations, all of these things we watch in the news, but we don't appreciate and we don't realize that it's actually affecting you. It's affecting your relationships, affecting your marriage. And so something that can affect you so deeply is worth caring about deeply. So I wanted to share this Maslow hierarchy of needs to just give you an idea of why perhaps you might be feeling a little bit uneasy about AI replacing so many jobs. And let me share this with you. The Maslow hierarchy of needs. You might have heard of it. Well, here we go. I think what people are feeling, and they can't quite put their finger on it, why it's just deeper, And I mean, again, I said that I'm not opposed to technology. I'm not opposed to AI. I think AI, when used correctly, can be very beneficial. I actually think in some cases AI has even leveled the playing field, right? It's been an equalizer in some industries for people who would have had to otherwise maybe pay lots and lots of money to get access to some of the information that AI is able to put out now. I'm happy about that. I'm happy about maybe communities who wouldn't have otherwise had access to some of the information that we have access to now with AI. So I'm not against AI. I'm not against technology. What I do take issue with, as I always say, is when something goes and threatens the very fundamental and threatens the very essence of what it means to be human. And I think why so many people are feeling very uneasy and just insecure about just AI and the rapid pace at which it seems to be wanting to just take over the human race. I think it's a very legitimate concern. Because why? Because of this that I want to share with you. This hierarchy right here at the bottom, this red over here is physiological needs. And it speaks to the very, very essence, the bare minimum of what we need to survive as human beings: breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. Okay, that's just what we need. Just to exist as human beings, we need to breathe. Of course, we need food. Then outside of that, we need health, we need employment, property, family, social ability. These two are the most fundamental, important things of being a human. But how are you going to eat if you can't afford to buy food? How are you going to pay for water? These days, you have to pay for your water. You have your utility bills that you have to pay for, and you need to be able to work in order to afford that. And if you can't afford it, we know of in some instances where you have your very basic need, your water or your electricity supply, being cut off, literally being cut off. If you can't afford clothing, this one I think perhaps will hit home more if you have kids, right? If you have kids, they have growth spurts, and then you can't afford to buy them clothes. I mean, that's a bad feeling. And sleep. Well, of course, I can tell you for now that if you're concerned about how you're going to make ends meet, you are not having a good night's sleep, right? Because all of these things that concern the human race is being threatened in real time. Your health. Okay, one might say, okay, well, only AI is just taking away from employment, and like, what does that got to do with anything? But what's very interesting, and what I'm definitely going to be speaking about and would love to dive into, is that AI technology is being employed by companies that are making decisions about your health insurance. And we are hearing of major companies. I don't want to share too much just yet, because I still want to do a whole episode and dive deeper on that one. But we have major companies right now who have, contracted with insurance companies to make denial claims easier and more efficient. And your health is absolutely integral to your survival. And can you imagine the feeling of having always paid insurance on time for your health insurance, and then you need a procedure and an AI denies you because of a glitch, and then you call in and then an AI responds and can't empathize with you or can't appreciate nuances of just you being a human, or appreciate that there will be certain procedures that in some instances might seem cosmetic and in other instances be very necessary. An AI machine can't really do that. And if your health depends on, an insurance company, and that insurance company is more concerned about its efficiency and its bottom line, it affects you. And then it doesn't just affect you, it affects your family, it affects your loved ones. It always affects families, it always affects relationships, whether it's love relationships or family relationships. And so, yes, I'm not sounding the alarm for technology per se, but I do want people to become more aware and more conscious of just how it's actually really playing out in their life. So with that said, I wanted to share why I'm so into this conversation. I'm really into this conversation because in real time, we are seeing families being torn apart. But again, I always like to have a balanced and a just different, just an all-rounded view on issues. There's also opportunity. Like all hope is not lost for you if you feel like you've been in a situation where, you feel threatened by AI. There are also opportunities for you to start creating businesses and just using it to your advantage so that you don't get left behind and that at least, you also benefit from this era that we're in. But I want to I want to speak more about not just AI in terms of finances today, but how the finances or the lack thereof plays itself out in society, plays itself out in love, plays itself out in families. And I wanted to share this Reddit post with you, or this article, right? It's it's really fascinating, just how fast technology and AI has moved. And this article is actually an old article, so I can just tell you right now that we're way ahead of this right now. But it was still something I wanted to share just to give you an idea of why I want the world and society to start planning their contingency plans. It says Waymo hits 2,000 vehicles while human drivers lose 6.9% pay. So Waymo is a driverless car in that started off in San Francisco. I've actually seen one of those cars. It's amazing. A driverless vehicle. I never thought I would live to see the day where you could see a car driving and obeying the rules of the road and there's no one driving it. Wow, that's interesting. But look at this. It says that another week, another set of developments that remind us why autonomous vehicles remain one of the most fascinating and complex technology sectors to watch unfold. And this edition covers Waymo putting numbers to its US fleet, Tesla widening its Austin robo-taxi footprint, and I want you to, here's the drum roll, and beginning supervised test underground in Vegas. And fresh data dropped on how AVs are already shifting ride-share economies. Okay, so ride-share economies are being shifted. That's definitely one area where people thought that, if there was ever going to be an advancement in technology and AI, or that certainly, AI is not going to take over blue collar jobs, or AI can't drive itself. And well, it's happening right now. AI is driving itself and is already having an impact in sectors, not just in people's lives. And do you know how many people are actually in this rideshare economy? It's very, very fascinating. And more than that, there's also another Reddit article that I really wanted to share with you. And I loved this Reddit post. It said, "What trillion-dollar problem is AI trying to solve? Wages." Okay, I don't know why that's a problem. It's good for people to work and earn a salary. Granted, I mean, I know that it really, how you feel about AI also depends very much on which side of the pendulum you fall, whether you lean more to an entrepreneurial business owner side or whether you lean more to an employer side. But the fact of the matter is the majority of people work for somebody. And even employers, not everybody is excited about using AI and a machine. Some businesses still like people. I know it might be hard to imagine, but yeah, I mean, as I always say, we people, we human beings, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. We are really not that bad. But stay with me to find out how this is playing itself out in love and how this could potentially start affecting your relationships, your families, and just how you can start thinking strategically to insulate yourself and to protect yourself against this type of fast escalating future. And it goes on to say, they're trying to use it to solve having to pay wages. tech companies are not building out $1 trillion of AI infrastructure because they're hoping you'll pay $20 a month to use AI tools to make you more productive. Okay. That's not the real reason. They're doing it because they know your employer will pay hundreds or thousands a month for an AI system to replace you. We are seeing that a lot. We are seeing that even right now with articles that I'm going to share with Amazon, just laying off another round of people because they say they've got AI systems to replace the people who are doing that kind of work. But in this particular Reddit post that I shared, these were the comments that came in afterwards. And I thought that, I realized and I was happy that somebody actually mentioned it, because this is really essentially the crux of the matter and where I want us to go to. So it says, we're creating the world for less people to be needed. I do not know what the average person was expecting. Okay. And that's true. And then came this particular portion here that is highlighted. It says, yet countries are begging people to have kids. And so you can see already the despair, the lack of hope that is starting to creep in, that, as human beings being biologically wired for connection, already that's not what we're even thinking about. We're thinking survival. We are thinking food. We are thinking shelter. We're thinking survival as an individual. You can't give what you don't have. And so already you can see that the dynamic and the shift in conversation and thinking is leaning less and less towards connecting and building strong relationships, and more towards, I don't want somebody else in my life, or I don't even want to think of having kids. And that's a dangerous territory to go into as people, as ordinary people. I don't want us to get to the space where we don't want to have kids. I want us to have kids. I don't want us to get into this space where we don't want to be in connections. We don't want to be in relationships because we're so busy trying to survive. Because contrary to this kind of thinking, I think we need to connect and we need to have more valuable relationships now more than ever. Now is the time where I think we need each other the most. Now is the best time I think we need to be connected. And if anything, what I think I'm grateful for that AI is starting to make people realize is to make us realize that, you know what? Yes, we do like being more efficient, but I kind of miss talking to a human. I kind of miss bouncing my ideas off another human being. And hopefully we'll come full circle as the human race and realize that we're not so bad after all, and that perhaps indeed strong relationships is a very powerful form of resistance. But after I read this, it really got me thinking further down my line of this depopulation theory that I have. Okay, what happens after that? What happens after people lose their jobs? What happens when people can't participate in the economy? Right? What does that practically look like? What are the different stages of things becoming so expensive? Societies becoming so industrialized, becoming so advanced. What does that look like towards its end stages? And we have examples of that. And then when I started thinking about, well, if there are less people in this world, isn't that population declining? Isn't that less people in this world? And then if there are less people in this world, then who's going to live in this world? Then who's going to be left in this world? And I started looking up more information just about what does this mean for society? And my nudge was right. When economy is looking like what it is now, modern society, the first thing that that absolves this kind of punch when there's inflation, when there's just tension and anxiety in the air, is relationship. Relationship is the one that absorbs and takes the punch of this. But it also, in my opinion, happens to be one of the most important thing that we need as human beings. Because two, I think, is better than one. Okay, good two is better than one. If you're toxic, then no, we don't want that, right? But I started realizing that when society starts to look like modern society, and the United States is very quickly becoming one of those nations where population is declining, because then what happens? Birth rates start collapsing, family building is delayed, continuity is breaking, and essentially what is happening is you're not running out of space. Okay, I know that they say that, oh, there's an overpopulation, which also is an argument that I think is quite interesting. And I had a comment on my previous video. Shout out to shout out to my first comment that spoke about just overpopulation and spoke about how just these views of these technological companies trying to shape the future and trying to shape society in a particular way, mentioned a very valuable observation. I would love to unpack it a little bit more, and I'll just introduce it here. Is that every day we're being told that there's overpopulation. Oh no, the world is so overpopulated. There's not enough space. And then, quite contrary to that, in real time, vast parts of Europe and the Western world is experiencing real-time population decline. So then what is it? Are we overpopulated or are we declining? Okay. And then I guess in just thinking about that, I realized, well, I guess perhaps the issue is not about land mass per se. What is really happening is that we're running out of systems that respect human continuity. We are in a time in modern society where systems are not conducive for human relationship. It's becoming less and less conducive for human continuity. And I mean, when we speak about AI and when we speak about your finances and it's, displacing jobs, there's certain, what it does is an economy creates an economy that doesn't work for the people. And I think an economy should work for people, not just systems. And so the very basic ABC of what is currently happening right now with AI is that, okay, jobs equal income. Income equals spending. Or maybe saving. Let's just say you're not a big spender. Okay, spending equals business revenue. Or my own version would be saving equals some security, right? Some safety and security for your future. Revenue equals income, economic stability. And I would say economic stability equals families. If you're stable and if you're in a position where you can afford to feed not just your mouths and many mouths, you're more positively predisposed to wanting to have one. But if the economy is not conducive to that, then that's definitely going to be the last thing on your mind. And so I wondered what this meant for the human race. And it turns out I wasn't wrong, because in this particular article, I thought it was interesting because I didn't think that such a place actually existed. And this is one of the villages, right? 2 births and 27 deaths in one village. 2 births. That is, I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. It just seems strange that there are actually communities, just going extinct, for lack of a better word, simply because they're not having children. So I want to read this article that I came across by Le Monde. My apologies if I'm not pronouncing that very well. But it says here, right, with an average of 1.03 children per woman, Poland has the lowest fertility rate in Europe. Excuse me. Family allowances has not changed that. The exhaustion of the population following the collapse of the 1990s and then 2 decades of the economic boom is one of the explanations. The Orthodox Church is arguably the liveliest place in Dubše Cerkivne. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. I really did not mean to butcher that. If you know the correct pronunciation of it, feel free to let them to put it in the description and to put it in the comments. And I would greatly appreciate that. I'm willing and I'm open to learn. But it says on this freezing November morning, in this Polish town near the border of Belarus, the mass gathered about 20 elderly people bent by devotion and the weight of their years. Inevitably, some members of this congregation would soon add to the village's statistics that since January 27 deaths have already been 27 deaths have already been recorded, compared to only 2 births. And the municipality is emptying out. The closure of the elementary schools, which averages 6 children per class, is being debated by the local council. And it says it illustrates a phenomenon occurring throughout Poland, the collapse of birth rate. In 2025, the number of children per woman childbearing age fell to 1.3, the lowest fertility rate in all of Europe. By comparison, France stood at 1.62, Germany at 1.35, and Spain 1.12. Okay, so there are a number of countries that are actually going through this population decline. And it started off with finances, not having enough money. And now we're in a world, and especially in the United States and in the Western culture, this is fast becoming a rapid reality for a number of people, unable to afford basic things. And I want to mention a few countries that are experiencing this, right? Because then if that's the case, then what's happening? I'm really trying to figure it out as well. But I think that I know that definitely strong relationships is going to be something that we'll need in future. And to buttress my point about just finances and how it actually affects relationship, how it affects love, this article, this person made this comment, and it made me sad. It says, in my city, London, it's too expensive to even live on our own nowadays. Most people can't even find a job. So what's the point of having a child? I don't know. I don't know. Let me know what you're sensing, because I think that outside of just being able to afford stuff, there's some things that money can't buy. There are really some things that are so fulfilling. At least in the right context, right? If you're in relationships that aren't good, that's not fulfilling. That's not what I'm talking about. If you are in situations where it's extremely stressful, that's not what I'm talking about. But I do know that a lot of people who maybe struggle financially, who have some sort of very healthy communities and relationship, will tell you right now that just that alone makes dealing with life easier. I once had a friend tell me that, friendships are supposed to make the world easier and not more difficult. And I agree with that. And already earlier on, I've shared how just there's this loneliness epidemic, and people are less connected and are in less meaningful relationship these days. And so even just, I mean, beyond, if you don't even have friends, then goodness, what are we even going to speak talking about relationships? The comment underneath that said, what people often overlook is the pressure parents in developed countries face. And this is really where I want to go to. It says both from society and from themselves to do everything perfectly for their children. Raising even one child has become so demanding that many parents simply don't have the time or capacity for more than two. And this is really what I wanted us to communicate about. Oh, oopsie, I didn't realize that was so tiny. Let me see. Okay. Well, I've read it, so I don't know if you can see it. You can just pause and zoom in on it. But then we could see that when this is the case, that countries start declining rapidly, emptying out. And as I think that is a security issue. If you're, what happens when you face an aggressor? Well, maybe that's why there's a push to building a robotic army, or maybe that's why there's just this extreme marketing towards trying to get people to have an adoption of AI in every area of our life, because perhaps with this reality becoming so stark, especially in the United States as well, in Canada and in other countries. I'm going to show you a graph right now. Let me see if it's actually there. We will need to find solutions. We need, because then literally there are not enough people to protect you. But is that really the solution? Isn't AI military really the solution? Are AI robots and AI robot dogs really the solution? Is emptying out humanity and putting more robots and more AI generated stuff the solution? No. I think we need to deal with the issues, and that is that people are hungry. People can't afford stuff. People want to be in relationships and healthy relationships, but every day social media is putting more and more pressure on us. We're being bombarded with, lifestyle videos. And I'm not against lifestyle videos. I know that, some people enjoy the finer things of life, and I absolutely think that that's okay if you do. But the pressure that people are just feeling these days to perform, and even in some cases going in debt to do that. To what end? To what end? This is a report by Bankrate's 2026 Annual Emergency Saving Report. Okay, and this is just, it was amazing. It says the national survey, the national opinion. So I'm reading the second paragraph. I'm really going to just try and zoom in here so you can follow in. Yay! There we go. It says the National Opinion Survey found that 30% of Americans say they would pay an emergency expense of $1,000 or more from savings, while 17% rely on their regular income. 1/3 said they would go into debt to cover such an expense, while others said they'd reduce spending to pay for it or take a different approach. And it says it's coming from the Bankrate's Emergency Savings Report, right? And then also it says most folks in America live paycheck to paycheck. I thought I had gotten more of the article, but that's literally what's happening, living paycheck to paycheck. And we know that especially after 2020 as well, a lot of families and a lot of young adults had to move back in with their parents, and they just simply couldn't afford to live. They simply couldn't afford to live. And that's unfortunate, but not dire, right? It's not all hope is lost. So have a look at this graph over here. These are the countries that are fast shrinking. right? Look at that. The rank number one is Kosovo, St. Martin, Marshall's Island, Moldova. And I'll just go and explain in some of the cases what's happening over here. So, for example, Japan is also one of the countries that are experiencing very, very serious issues when it comes to population decline. And it started off with expensive stuff, fast technology, advanced technology, and and right now they're declining every year. Their birth rate is literally far below replacement, and far below replacement, that term just simply means even if they started having children, is it enough for it to start to basically revive the population and bring it back to life in good time, essentially? South Korea, I see that South Korea, is it on this graph? There's still quite a few other countries, but I wanted to also just China, okay, that China's the most developed and most technologically advanced country is also starting to experience population decline. We've seen a lot of footage about just women not wanting to have kids anymore. They don't want to get married. They don't want, or if they do get married, they don't want to have kids. They're delaying having relationships, and this is China, supposedly one of the countries with the biggest, one of the largest populations in the world, having this problem. Excuse me, having this problem. Italy, okay, that is thousands of people like per year, reducing, entire villages emptying out. Long term in Spain, long term immigration, fertility rate one among the lowest in Europe. Russia, as I said, Russia, Germany, Greece, Portugal, Hungary, these countries experiencing population decline. And incidentally, also, the populations with the fastest growing or with the youngest and the youngest populations also majority of them happen to be in Africa, where technology is not so advanced. And yes, there's definitely a larger economic gap there where the haves and the have-nots, there's a huger gap between them there, but they're having more children and they still having babies and living their best life despite not having that much in terms of per capita, right? But here in societies and in where we feel modern, where we are becoming more modernized, we are also becoming less human. And I want us to address this issue. I want us to speak about it. In the United States, in the next 10 to 20 years, the birth rate is going to be below replacement since 2007. And what's interesting about the United States, and also the same as Spain as well, was that it's actually lower because immigration is masking the real numbers. One of the comments that I actually read, which I thought was also very telling about the UN report, giving its concerns about populations that are experiencing this issue, is that, one of the comments, and I think rightfully said, was that they think that these UN numbers are not giving the real numbers in terms of the fertility rate in some of these countries. So having shared all of that, what am I getting to? Like, okay, population decline, AI, relationships. Okay, you've said a lot. Well, what are you trying to, what are you getting to? I'm trying to get us to start thinking strategically about how we can leverage AI to improve our relationships with finances. If everybody does a little bit in their own life, cumulatively, it ends up being a very powerful impact on the society and on the community as a whole. And perhaps you might start start challenging yourself to say, okay, I don't need to be so discouraged about AI. What can I do to improve my financial situation? Perhaps we can start getting people to become more discerning and selective about applications and AI and how much of it they let into their personal life. I want you to not think of it in terms of, okay, this is just relationships, but think of it as survival. Okay, we need to start thinking about technology. We need to start thinking about AI and the survival of the human race. And sometimes I don't like to use the word human race because then it just removes it away from your context. But just think of it. If you have kids, or if you want to get married one day, or maybe you're not married, right? But you want to be in a real relationship, or you want to start a business, you need a network. We know human being is an island. You need a network. What are you going to do if there aren't sufficient number of people for your network? Networks is business relationships. What are you going to do if you have kids and then they want to get married? And like I said earlier, the environment is not conducive for them to get married. Not because they don't want to, but because everybody's dating their AI, or people are afraid to commit because they can't afford to feed themselves. Talk much of feeding your daughter, or talk much of committing to your son. What's going to happen to your line? And so I think that this was pretty interesting. More statistics that I wanted to share. It said these are the graphs of the nations that the fertility rate is drastically reducing. It said in many cases, fertility rates in countries in 2024, and that's this graph over here. Oh, my cursor's not showing you, but it's the bottom right graph. If you can see, it said that, let me increase it a little bit more so you can also have a look at it. Ta-da. Okay. In many cases, the fertility rates of countries in 2024 have dropped significantly below replacement levels. For example, South Korea, China, Italy, Japan, Canada, Germany, Russia, United Kingdom, United States, and France all have fertility rates below replacement levels. It's a real thing. People are hungry, and if people are hungry, they're not trying to feed more mouths than necessary. I wanted to, when it says when productivity, like, I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about how just the disparity, the two worlds of billionaires, successful business people who are leveraging and really benefiting from AI on the one side, very excited and optimistic about AI and where this world is going, and even excited of AI potentially replacing CEOs, right? We had the Salesforce CEO share a video, and I'm actually going to share that video. I'm going to share that video actually with you right now, just so that you can see that I'm not making this up. So let's have a look at this. Let's have a listen to this video. Fair use.
Said you won't hire any more coders at Salesforce. And you've said today's CEOs will be the last to manage all human workforces. What does this mean for businesses?
Well, I think I just had a meeting, coming from a meeting with my head of engineering, and we're looking at productivity levels of 30 to 50% this year in key functions like engineering, coding, support.
You're saying
service.
AI is doing 30 to 50% of the work?
AI is doing 30 to 50% of the work at Salesforce now. And I think that will, continue. I think that all of us have to get our head around this idea that AI can do things that before, we were doing, and we can move on to do higher value work. And I do think, to your point, CEOs have to make sure their values are in the right place and that values bring value.
Could an agent replace you one day?
I hope so.
You hope so.
I mean, of course, I'm partially kidding, you know that. But we're becoming more automated.
There is no lie in that. We are becoming more automated. I actually want to play a particular, he made a comment and I wrote it down, and it says that we are in an era where it's this is going to be the last wave of CEOs to control a human workforce. I would actually like to play that video, that portion
You
again.
said you won't hire any more coders.
Hold on. Just hold on. I want to share that portion with you, and I want to pause because that's really what I want to get to. Multitasking is a fallacy, by the way, in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to play it for you just one more time, but just this portion.
Salesforce. And you've said today's CEOs will be the last to manage all human workforces.
Today's CEOs will be the last to manage all human workforces. Wow. Today's CEOs will be the last to manage all human workforces. Today's CEOs. I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean for you? That, people who are in very influential positions, the drive, the vision is to make human workforce extinct. That's essentially what this means. There's no other ways to slice this pie. The drive is to get people to the end of the video speaks about how, well, if you automate things and you're more automated, then you can just move on to higher value things. Yeah, that's all good and well when you're a billionaire. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not against wealthy people. In fact, I'm very much pro building wealth, and that's why I'm harping on this so much. Because perhaps if enough of us can start thinking about strategizing about how to really survive as a human race and not be victims of what's happening right now, not be victims or like find ourselves in situations where we're not adequately prepared for what's coming, then perhaps we don't have to be so nervous about AI. If we can start realizing that the biggest leverage and resource and the most valuable thing that we have right now is each other, then we can really start to lean in and hone in and start leveraging off of those relationships and start future-proofing ourselves for this new era that is seemingly happening. And we know that this is obviously just a comment by a very wealthy person, but just what if the people decided to say, no, I'm going to choose to hire people. I'm going to choose intimate relationships. I'm going to choose a family. I'm going to choose to not allow social media to influence my lifestyle. Yes, I'll use it for aspirations and for inspiration, but I'm choosing to not allow this technological advancement end my legacy. Do you know how powerful that would be? We must not underestimate our resilience and our ability to survive as a human race. But with this, I wanted to share that, with this drive towards more productivity, well, what does that mean for income? Because when productivity rises, income disappears, and then this system, in my opinion, destabilizes. And what helped me was stepping back and asking more basic questions, not about technology, but how just economies functions. And so if machines are producing more, fewer people are earning, then the demand collapses. And when demand collapses, obviously we need a savior to step in. People become desperate and start leaning more towards structures and institutions in a hope to bail them out. And I can't help but wonder whether this is where the excitement about the conversations of the universal basic income is starting to come in. I don't know. I haven't given, I don't want to share my position yet on the universal basic income, but what I can share with you is that all hope is not lost. There are avenues that you can use and leverage AI to change your story, to change your situation, and that a very real solution is being intentional about becoming more connected to the right people with the right mindset in the world around you. Because at the end of the day, they can't force you they can't stop you from searching out other human beings, and they can't stop you from being in a relationship if you don't let them. Anyway, if people can't earn, they can't participate. When people can't participate in systems, they look for ways to manage them instead. And I think essentially what I'm trying to get to, and that's why I share the Maslow hierarchy of needs in the beginning, is that work, it's not just about the money. It's really deeper than that. It's about dignity. It's about contribution. It's about belonging. We feel so rewarded as human beings when we create something, when we're able to put our hands to something and see the fruit of it, and be able to just take something away and make an honest living and just take care of ourselves. And when that's stripped away, more and more, we're chipping away at human dignity. We're chipping away at what it essentially means to be human. Be fruitful, multiply, mingle, be in relationships, create stuff. Okay, we a lot of sentiments, even just concerning AI, creatives, even though it might seem like it's a smaller minority, genuinely experiencing struggle because now AI is just taking over the creative space. And we're looking at Hollywood, just the creative space being also overrun and overtaken by AI. And initially, they were not part of this conversation because they thought that they were, not replaceable. And now we're very quickly seeing that they can be. And people are concerned, and rightfully so. But at the end of the day, when we are continuing in a space like this, it will lead to population decline. For a fact, it will lead to population decline, and we need to be concerned about that. Just the last article that I wanted to share with you was this one, where it just recently, this is actually just yesterday, I think, where Amazon is cutting up to 30,000 jobs. 30,000 jobs. Amazon frames the layoffs as part of a structural reset aimed at building a linear, more efficient organization. Several factors are driving these cuts. Excess management layers. So years of hiring created overlapping roles and slowed decision making. Post-pandemic normalization. Growth forecasts from 2020 to 2022 did not materialize as the expected scale. Yes. AI and automation. New systems reduce the need for routine reporting and operational tasks. Capital reallocation. Amazon is redirecting its sources towards cloud infrastructure, AI development, and logistics, not wages. I've shared a lot in this. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And when people don't feel economically needed, they stop feeling emotionally safe to build families. People say the world is overpopulated, but birth rates are collapsing everywhere. So which is it, right? We're not running out of space. We're just running out of systems that respect human continuity. And if people can't find stable work, contribution disappears, and then worth becomes optional, then children stop feeling like a responsible thing to do. You start feeling like you're being irresponsible if you bring a child into this world. And it's not because people hate families, but because just the future just feels unsafe to build. So when I ask you, if jobs vanish, who buys anything? I mean, I'm also asking, who dares to build anything? Who dares to build families? Who dares to build communities? Who believes tomorrow is worth preparing for? Well, thank you for staying with me this long. If you stayed with me up to this point in this live, I think that one of the things that we can definitely start doing is that, we can start building we can start being intentional about connection. We can start being intentional about community building. And population decline is just an evidence that something in our system has lost faith in humanity. And there is hope. Human beings, I think we're awesome. And I think just understanding how this changes and how you think about work skills and resilience and how it could eventually just play itself out. Just knowing and having this information can also help you plan better and contribute to the repair of the modern society. And so if you want to think more clearly about the future, just not emotionally, and not dramatically, but really sober